Thank you everyone for tuning in. This is SportsTiger's post-match segment. And today's game, Punjab versus Kolkata. And Kolkata was looking forward to a win. They were not performing to the best of their potential. And finally, they got that thanks to Eoin Morgan, the captain who wasn't firing in this tournament, but finally got a good knock in today. We're going to discuss the match further with my two guests, our cricket expert, Monty Pane sir, and Arohi. Hi, Monty. Hi, Arohi.
Hi, hello guys.
So, Monty, probably a little disappointing for you. One of your favorite teams, Punjab, losing out. But what do you have to say about KKR? Eoin Morgan finally living up to his potential, finally leading the game, showing the team some way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Eoin Morgan hasn't really scored a lot of runs in this tournament, and I think he probably had the lowest runs out of all the captains. So this is a big innings for him, to be honest, because I think KKR is a big franchise. They've got the likes of Gautam Gambhir, who's captained them, and they've won a few trophies. Been a very successful franchise. So this was a big innings for Eoin Morgan, because I think we all kind of mentioned that as much as everyone else was performing individually, it was Eoin Morgan who was really scoring the runs. And so for him, this will be a huge confidence boost. For Punjab Kings 11, I think, again, it's runs on the board. They obviously... the openers were a little bit scratchy at the start. You couldn't really work out who's the guy is going for the boundaries and which one's taking the singles. They both looked a bit scratchy, and only getting 36, 37 runs in the power play. Probably kind of like set the tone for the innings with Punjab Kings. Chris Gale obviously got a good ball and somehow scratched one, but it's just. I don't think Punjab Kings really worked out, how are we going to set the total on this pitch? What is it? It looked a bit like, they just wasn't sure.
I agree. Definitely, it was a very tentative start to Punjab's innings. In fact, if we'll take a quick look at the scorecard, Punjab scoring just a mere 123 and lost 9 wickets in their 20 overs. KL Rahul couldn't put up a big score today, only 19 of 20, and Mayank supporting him on the other end with 31 of 34. Probably it was just Chris Jordan in the end with his 30 of 18 that helped Punjab propel to a sort of a competitive total and helped them put up a little contest. Otherwise, Punjab was totally out of the game. In fact, big disappointment with Chris Gale, Deepak Hooda, Nicholas Pooran, Shah Rukh Khan, all the big hitters not performing today, but some impressive performances by the Kolkata bowlers. If you see the young Shivam Mavi, just 13 runs in his 4 overs, 1 wicket. Pat Cummins finally bowling in the power play, taking 2 wickets as well. Sunil Narayan bowling really well in the middle overs, taking 2 wickets. And Prasidh Krishna, probably the most promising talent in this lineup, taking 3 crucial wickets today in his 4 overs. But if you look at Kolkata's innings, had a horrific start once again. The opening pair failing, Shubman Gill only scoring 9, Nitish Rana out on a duck, and Rahul Tripathi and Eoin Morgan putting up a partnership, saving the innings. Rahul scoring 41, Eoin scoring 47, and was not out in the end. Didn't see much of the muscle of Andre Russell because he only scored 10, got run out, and Dinesh Karthik in the end scoring 12 of just 6. But if we talk about Punjab's bowling, not much to write home about, because if you see Mohammad Shami only getting 1 wicket in his 4 overs, Arshdeep Singh not the best of days, just 1 wicket and went for 27 runs. Ravi Bishnoi looked really promising, I think, only 19 runs in his 4 overs. Chris Jordan couldn't do the magic with the ball the way he did with the bat, 3 overs, 24 runs, and Deepak Hooda, expensive 2 overs for 20. Monty, we were talking a lot about KKR's batting order in our previous segments. And once again, we saw Narayan coming out at 4. Once again, we saw the openers failing and Eoin Morgan pushing himself down. Do you think they got lucky today because there was not much of a score, there was not much of a target to chase, or it could have been another hole that they had dug for themselves once again?
Yeah, look, I think it was a low total, and they obviously got a little bit lucky with some of the early dismissals of Deepak Hunda and Chris Gale. But I think the concern's going to be is that how do Punjab Kings turn this around? They sort of playing like a bit scratchy in my opinion. Anil Kumble obviously is trying his best. I think with Ravi Bishnoi, he's been a great addition, but possibly the likes of the top order batters, there's got to be some sort of, I feel, roles given to the guys of like, right, what's your role? Where do you prefer to bat? Possibly the likes of who's going to be attacking role, who's going to defend. These things are really important to build a really good total if you're going to bat first. And even with KKR, next game, hopefully they got some runs on the board. It just, you get the impression that Eoin Morgan is a good captain of this franchise. But I think if KKR are going to get to the playoffs, I think Eoin Morgan needs to continually, perform with the bat. That's going to be the factor. I think the difference if KKR can get to the playoffs or not.
Absolutely. I think it'll depend a lot on how Eoin Morgan performs, considering the top order is not really firing. But also, my concern is if they want to not only make it to the playoffs, if they really want to win the championship, I feel there needs to be a little rejig in the batting order. I don't know what the tactics are behind sending Sunil Narayan up and pushing Morgan down. And then Nitish Rana, I still feel probably can be tried at number 4, and you can have Rahul Tripathi opening for you. Those are just my thoughts, but really interesting thought that you put out there about the openers of Punjab being a little scratchy. Like I said, they were very tentative, a very cautious approach. So Arohi, I'll come to you. Do you feel that it is also a lot to do with the fact that Rahul is under so much pressure that if he loses his wicket, they have pretty much like lost the game? Because you have seen this more often than not, that when Rahul loses his wicket, the game just goes haywire. So I think do you think it's that kind of pressure that's on him that makes him play very tentatively, which is not his usual self? If you see the kind of opener Rahul is for his international squad, he's a real firecracker. But with the Punjab franchise, seems to be a little too tentative. Is it that pressure of putting a price to his wicket because he doesn't trust the batting down the order?
It is that, but I think specifically अगर हम आज के मैच के बारे में बात करें, तो I think the pressure wasn't about मैं आउट हो गया तो आगे के कितने प्लेयर्स मेरे रन स्कोर कर पाएंगे. I think आज के मैच में ऐसे लगा कि generally Rahul is not the kind of a player to score big in the power play. He lets that role be taken up by Mayank Agarwal, who's on the other end. So आज जब उन्होंने देखा कि शायद मयंक अग्रवाल भी नहीं स्कोर कर रहे, I think that is why he went on to like put those boundaries out there so that थोड़ा score बन जाए, because you know how difficult it is post the power play आपको runs बनाना ऐसे pitch पे. So I think because of that was playing more on his mind than आगे का lineup. So probably that was a bigger factor in his wicket today. But yes, definitely, given the fact कि उनके middle order में ज़्यादा कुछ तारे तोड़े नहीं अभी तक, तो I think that is a constant pressure on him being a captain as well as an opener. Although you need to switch your minds when you are a batsman and when you are a captain, but I think कहीं ना कहीं वो pressure आ ही जाता है because you are responsible for the team going forth. You are responsible for the team winning or losing at the end of the day, because people are going to point out your mistakes, your strategy, your good points. So I think yes, that as well. And then his role as an opener is also a bit of a pressure on him, given the fact कि अगर आपके साथ जो साझेदारी निभा रहा है वो अगर बैट्समैन ना खेले और आपको आपके नेचुरल गेम से बाहर जाके कुछ खेलना पड़े, तो फिर it becomes a little tricky.
Yeah, definitely a lot of pressure on him, especially with his strategies. He looks sometimes a bit bogged down by this pressure. Whenever I've seen him lead this squad, he tends to show a lot of pressure on his face as well. It's just showing that probably it's just the responsibility is a bit too much. It's really funny to see that on his face. But I hope he's able to cope up with this really well and can perform better, because I personally wasn't impressed too much with the bowling strategy. In fact, on the opposite end, Eoin Morgan really showed the way how to mix up the bowlers right, who to get in the power play, who to get in the middle overs. But I thought Rahul sort of got that wrong in today's game. But Monty, I want to talk about Punjab's lineup. If you have one of the best openers for India playing for you, and probably one of the best openers for on the reserve bench of India for you as well. You have the universe boss with you. On the bench, the world's number one T20 batsman is sitting with you. You have one of the premier bowlers of India with you. You have one of the best upcoming talents in your spin bowling department in the form of Ravi Bishnoi for you. Where is this team going wrong? What's happening with this team?
Well, I think there's, Nicholas Pooran is that kind of like interesting role where he hasn't really fired like we've seen him fire this year. And maybe, you can bring in David Malan, in the next game, see how he performs. Punjab Kings has always been that team, hasn't it? Where you kind of feel like they should be at the bottom of the table, but they somehow get too close to the playoffs. They somehow, perform really well. And they just haven't really, there's been some really good individuals. Arshdeep, Singh's been great. The opening, like for Punjab to do well, they need that opening partnership to fire. Then it allows Chris Gale to come in, play his shots, and then we've got Deepak, Hunda, and Nicholas Pooran at the back end, to really do well. So I think it starts at the top of the order. So when the top of the order doesn't do that well, or if they lose, a couple of wickets, the batters who are in the middle order, they're not used to consolidating. They're used to, right, we're going to go as well and hit fours and sixes. So that's why I think the likes of David Malan, where Nicholas Pooran hasn't, really fired, bring him into because he can play both roles, and, I don't know, would you go instead of Chris Gale? He's such a big player, isn't he? It's a difficult sort of scenario. They've got a really tricky situation, haven't they, Punjab Kings? They've got good openers, but then Chris Gale, is he better at three? Do we get him to open the batting? Do we drop the guy? It's such a big player. That'd be tricky to manage. I think the real problem is Nicholas Pooran. If he can actually consolidate when team are not doing well, and also when, they've got a few runs, he can start hitting it out of the ground. That number 5 spot is such a critical spot for Punjab Kings that I think the real issue is with Nicholas Pooran. I'm just not sure what role he's playing in the game at the moment.
That's a very interesting point. The kind of players Pooran and Gale are, they're not used to consolidating the innings. If you lose quick wickets at the top, they have a very different role usually in the national squad that they play in. And we've seen a very different role for Gale as well in this tournament in the past. So how do they really cope up with this? Because we haven't seen the kind of starts that Punjab got last year with Mayank and KL. So very different kind of role for them, and it's not really working. So does Malan get an opportunity? You don't know, because like you rightly said, dropping Gale, such a big decision. But a lot of questions for Pooran. I think a lot of questions for Moises Hendricks as well, because if you want to back Chris Jordan as the all-rounder in the squad, then probably it's time to get one of the fast bowlers in, because I don't know if there's enough battery in this pace attack after Mohammad Shami to come in and really bowl in those short of the length, fiery, fast balls. So probably it'll be a good idea to just keep backing Jordan as your all-rounder and try and get somebody else in place of Hendricks. That's something that I felt, because now you have somebody like Shah Rukh Khan who does strengthen the lower order with his bat. So let's see how that rolls out. But Arohi, I'm going to come to your favorite subject, which is the dew factor in today's game. Since you've spoken about it so many times, what do you think is going to be the case going forward in Ahmedabad, because Punjab is going to be playing the rest of the games in Ahmedabad as well? So do you lose the toss and lose the game? Like, is that how it's going to be?
I think that is going to be the norm for all the matches in Ahmedabad because it looks like it. You know, you have Rajasthan on one end, and given the fact that now we're going into the summers, which means the hotter the days, colder the nights, and this drastic change in the temperature is going to bring on that dew. And once the dew comes in, the game is out of your hands because you can't really do anything about that dew. And the teams bowling second in a match are really going to be it's really going to be really difficult to stop that the other team from chasing whatever target, be it a small target, be it a high target. It is going to be really difficult. So I think tosses are going to play a major big deal henceforth.
I agree. I agree. In Ahmedabad, I think if this is how it's going to be, if this is how the second innings is going to pan out with so much dew on the field, I think half the battle can be won by just winning the toss. I think in every game in Hyderabad. But I think that's a better question for you too, as well, Monty. I mean, how do you approach this? Like, what does your approach as a bowler become? If this is the kind of dew, if you saw the game today, it was so wet. You just immediately knew that after the first 6-7 overs it's going to become so hard for the bowlers to do anything because of the amount of water that was on the field. So how do you approach a situation like that as a bowler?
Well, this is what we said, I think, earlier. Why don't they start the games half an hour early? So then it's a more of a fair playing field, level playing field, and also, it's you don't want it to be just one-sided affair where the team that bats first, if they get a good total, they got a good chance to win, and the other team's it's very difficult for them to get involved in the game. So I do urge teams to start maybe half an hour early if the dew factors plays obviously a huge role.
Yeah, even I feel that this is one of the options that one could look at. Otherwise, it's going to get very, very difficult for the bowlers as the tournament progresses, and we have more matches at wickets like Ahmedabad, and we saw that today. I think apart from Bishnoi, I think people were struggling to really hit the right line and length and target the batsman. But well, today's game is done and dusted. Good win for KKR. I think they were really hungry for this one. I do think they got a bit lucky though with the low total that was set by Punjab because the early wickets that they lost could have put them in another very, very difficult position. But let's see how the rest of the tournament pans out for them. But your final thoughts on tomorrow's game, Monty, because there's a big one coming up. Two teams that are not at the bottom, but at the top of the table instead. So very different day tomorrow. It's going to be Delhi versus Bangalore. But the venue remains the same, Ahmedabad. And a huge, huge blow to Delhi with Ashwin not being part of the squad anymore. He's left the bio bubble. So, your thoughts on tomorrow's game, Delhi and Bangalore?
Yeah, again, look, I think that's going to be, RCB are probably playing better than we, thought. They're the team that is actually growing as the tournament is evolving. And Delhi Capitals seems, I think, Ashwin, I don't know if he's going to be that much of a big blow. He's only taken one wicket, and he's in the power play really where, he's able to control the innings. If they can find another bowler to do that, I think potentially that could be a factor. But I guess Delhi Capitals have been a team which play consistently well now. They're a team where I think a lot of the players know their roles. They know how to get the team back where they need to. So I think there was always that question mark on Rishabh Pant, thinking how would he be able to be a good captain, and I think he's done well. He's done really well as a captain. But I think the real question mark is going to be on the spin. Spin is always going to play a huge role. Amit Mishra has been a brilliant bowler. He bowls well again. I think RCB could be under pressure, but RCB they're a good team. They're a team that even AB de Villiers and Glenn Maxwell are both enjoying this year's IPL. They're both having lots of sort of their roles are very much so are to do with how Virat Kohli sets the agenda. So again, when you got Virat Kohli in your team, fans are always going to be tuning in and watching the IPL.
Absolutely, a big matchup tomorrow. Like I said, two teams that are at the top of the table right now have been performing very consistently. I do feel they have a decent replacement in the form of Lalit Yadav for Ashwin for tomorrow's game. Bowls in decent off spins and actually contributes a lot more with the bat. But let's see. Question marks on Steven Smith as well, because Smith didn't really have the best of outings in the previous game. So I'm really curious to see whether Smith remains in the game or not. However, talking about the win or loss, like me and Arohi discussed earlier, I feel if Delhi wins the toss, they win the game. If RCB wins the toss, they win the game, because seems like that's how the pitch is going to pan out. But yes, definitely the overseas options that are now missing for Bangalore is going to hurt them very badly, because we got the news this morning of Zampa and Richardson heading back to their home as well. So not enough options on the bench anymore for RCB, since we both were of the opinion that Christian should be replaced. So it's going to get very difficult for RCB to find that replacement. But let's see what happens. A lot of questions to be answered by both the managements, but definitely a great matchup, top of the table matchup, worth looking out for. Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Arohi, for joining me in the post-match segment. And thanks to all the viewers as well. You are watching Sports Tiger. We'll catch you once again tomorrow before the game begins. It's a big one. It's Delhi versus Bangalore. So stay tuned in. Thank you so much.